Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to remove and replace the turbo on a 99-03 Super Duty. And while I'm in here, I'm also going to be doing up pipes and a high flow outlet with the exhaust back pressure valve delete, and also a delete pedestal. First thing we need to do is get our air filter out of the way. All your clamps here up through there should be 8mm or 5/16. And there's also two bolts that go right here that holds this piece on. Mine are obviously missing. I have replacements for those, but I believe those are 10mm. Those need to come out, and then you can go ahead and pull all that stuff off. And there's a couple differences here on mine that I'll note. You may have these, you may not. One of them, some of the aftermarket turbo options, they've obviously got a different boot than the factory one, and it might use a clamp like that rather than the normal hose clamp. And I'm sure you notice now that that's not a factory turbo. That's the 38R ball bearing turbo. The process is exactly the same regardless. That doesn't make any difference on how this job is done, because that's just a direct drop-in turbo. And one other thing that I'd like to note here too is this piece here that the CCV routes into. If yours is still hooked up, I've always just been able to pull the plastic piece out of there without doing anything else with the hose. It just pops up and out of there, and then when I reinstall it, it just slides back on. Next, we can go ahead and get our driver's side intercooler pipe off of here. This clamp. These clamps here are all 11mm down there. You don't have to take all 4 of them off to get this pipe out. I figure it's probably common knowledge at this point, but just in case anybody doesn't know, when you pull this apart, especially this side here, there is a pretty high probability of seeing some oil. That is completely normal, and you can actually see that I've got some in the turbo inlet right there. Completely normal. That's just from the crankcase ventilation. This thing here, it routes the vapors back up into the intake so that it can be burned off in the engine. And then once your clamps are loose, you can just pull that out of there. And there you go. If you haven't done it yet, this is a good time to do the foil delete. It's also a good time to paint your pipes if you want to. Remember the oil I mentioned? Yeah, normal. Now we can move on to the passenger side. And you want to get the map sensor out of the way first, this here, and the hose. You won't have this most likely. That's just a homemade boost fooler that I made many years ago. These nuts here, I've seen them different on different trucks. My other truck, these are 10mm. On this truck here, they're 11. You can figure that out on your truck. And yeah, that little red thing pops down, and then push in. There. Whew, at least it hit the floor. Alright, and then you can move this clamp here and get this hose off of here and just get this whole thing out of the way. Now we can go ahead and loosen our clamps for our intercooler pipe. And now we can just pull our pipe out. And these longer boots do make it slightly more difficult. Now we can unhook all this crap off of the spider thingy, whatever you want to call it here, because that'll be coming out here pretty soon. Like me here, you've got your air intake heater deleted and a boost fitting put in place there. That's usually a 3/8 wrench to take that apart. And don't lose your little ferrule in there. Now we can loosen up our other clamps on the spider here. Sometimes you need a screwdriver for that. And sometimes you don't. That was convenient. These ones down here will be the same. There we go. Just slide that back. Now everything should be loosened up. Oh. Wiring harness is still hung up on the little hook thing down here. There. That hook right there is what held me up. Got hooked on the main harness there. So now would be a great time to stuff some rags down in these or put some tape over them. You know, there's a screen in there, but obviously that's not going to stop everything that could do damage to the engine. So now at this point you can remove your downpipe. I've already removed mine. I will be pulling the clip from one of my other videos and putting it right here for you to look at. Right, next you're going to take the downpipe clamp off and the clamp for the collector. Kind of hard to see back in there. Both of those are 11 millimeter. So once you get the nut backed off enough, keep a look off to the left there, you can see it sliding out. And then you can pop it up and out of there. Like so. That little T part there locks into the other part of the clamp. And then you're gonna take a screwdriver or a chisel or something and give that a whack so that it pops loose. And then should pop off like that. It does that in 3 different places. If it's been on there a long time, you're gonna have a fun time trying to get to it, especially if you're basically laying on the engine. Another thing you can do, depending on how the clamp is positioned, let's get a screwdriver in here and try to get up underneath part of it. Usually easier said than done. If you're gentle, you can go against the outer part of the clamp. And it doesn't look like that's going to work for me this time. Oh, there we go. And this part, you're pretty much going to have to kind of go by feel to get the bottom part of the clamp off. I'll show you what you're looking at here, though. You can try to get in there and pop this bottom part off, same way you did the other ones. Then once you get the clamp completely loose, just kind of spread it out a little bit and slide it back over the collector. That way it's out of the way of the turbo. You can just leave it on the collector. And just kind of feel around, make sure it's completely released from the turbo, and you're good. Now we'll move on to the downpipe clamp. Same process, just a little easier to get to. Once you've got that all loose, same deal. You can just, come on. There you go. Just slide it over the downpipe and let her hang. Now we can unhook this. This is the plug for the back pressure valve. And also the little clip for the rod actuates it. So just get yourself a decent pry bar like this and show you how to pop that loose there. Just like that. You can use this piece of the pedestal right here as kind of a leverage point and just twist it like you just saw. And then you can pop it down off the bottom of the turbo. And then grab a 13 millimeter and take these 2 bolts off right here. That one, and then the one on the back side. Don't mess with that one. Now the turbo is ready to come out. So it may get a little stuck on there. Gently work with it and it'll pop loose. And then just kind of work it out of here. This is why you want to make sure your intake plenums there are covered up, because you're guaranteed to end up knocking crap down in them. So that concludes the turbo removal part. If you want to continue watching to see how to do your up pipes, as well as a back pressure delete pedestal, new O-rings, redoing a lot of stuff in here. So keep watching if you want to see that, or skip to about this time right here. That'll begin the reinstallation process of the turbo. You obviously have to replace the turbo O-rings when you reinstall it, and as far as I know, every turbo O-ring kit comes with 2 sets, and that is so you can also do your pedestal O-rings. And if you're this far into it, you'd be pretty stupid not to go ahead and just pull the pedestal. It's literally 4 bolts that are 10 millimeter. One there, there, back there, and back there. And take them 4 bolts out, and the pedestal lifts right out. All right, then once you've got all 4 bolts out, just kind of give it a little tug, pops up. Then once you get the pedestal off, go ahead and get your old O-rings out of there. There's a little bit of yellow crap left on there. We'll clean up some of that later. But for right now, since I'm moving on to the up pipes, make sure you cover that up, because that is a direct shot right down into the turbo oil feed. And as far as doing the up pipes, you know, if you have a manual and you're wanting to do up pipes, I would wait until you need a clutch replacement, unless they're really bad. If you have an automatic, I'd just wait until it inevitably fails and then do them then, because while you can do this with the transmission end, it is kind of a pain. Now down here on the bottom, we can go ahead and start taking our up pipes off. These are all 13 millimeter fasteners typically on both sides here. Now if you're doing this with the transmission end, I feel sorry for you. You know, if you're lucky, these will all break loose, but if they start snapping off or rounding off on you and you've got the transmission in here, you're gonna have an awful time. You're probably gonna wanna burn the truck down. Once you get all 4 of your bolts out of there, you can kind of wiggle this a little bit. It comes loose, and you should be able to bring just the whole assembly down one time. There we go. I'm not sure how I had any drive pressure at all. So now we can go ahead and put our turbo pedestal back on. In my case here, this is a non-back pressure valve pedestal, the delete pedestal. There is some ways that you can do a DIY route as far as deleting the back pressure valve, where you just modify your existing pedestal. I don't particularly like that method, just because it seems to me like that's just easier leak points and stuff. You've got to tap threads in and put plugs in and all that stuff, and really this just gives it a lot cleaner of a look anyway. So we're going to go ahead and put this on, put new O-rings back there. If you don't get all of that yellow crap off, it's not a big deal, because you probably won't be able to get it all off. If there's a little bit left on there, it's fine. Just make sure there's no dirt or anything on there, and always use new O-rings. And what I like to do too is put a little bit of clean motor oil on the O-rings. That way when I'm torquing everything down, if anything does move a little bit, there's pretty much no chance of it tearing the O-ring or anything. You'll probably notice that extra fuel line there on mine. That's because I have a 4-line feed kit, and I didn't have the last line installed when I pulled everything here, because in order to get that line in the right way, you have to pull the turbo, and I was procrastinating on that part. So I had a 3-line feed kit for a while, but now I've got all 4. If you have or are installing a 4-line feed kit at the same time here, you will have to make sure that that line back there is still unhooked before you can get them bolts in. So now we'll go ahead and torque all 4 of these bolts in a cross pattern to 18 foot-pounds. So now at this point we can put our turbo back on, or if you want to follow along for another couple minutes here, I'm going to be replacing the outlet on my turbo with the high flow outlet. Now we're going to replace the outlet housing on here. So if you've seen my turbo rebuild video, you've already seen me do this before, and you can just skip this part if you want. These are all 8mm 12 point, and what I usually do is take a wrench like that and just use a dead blow hammer so you can just break the torque on them. And then sometimes these will just fall right off. Other times you need to persuade it a little bit with a soft mallet or a block of wood and a hammer. You definitely don't want to hit it with a hard hammer. Of course, my situation here, this is getting thrown in the scrap bin, so I can hit it with a sledge if I want, as long as I don't damage the rest of the turbo. And what I like to do here is just real quick, just take a scuff pad or something along here just to clean up any little bit of rust that's on there, just to help it seal back up when you put everything back together. So now we can get our new high flow outlet here. There's a DIY option for this as well, where you just weld the hole shut and all that, but I'm not confident enough in my welding to attempt all that. And just start getting your bolts started in here. Now we can go ahead and start snugging them all down. Don't torque them down yet, but just get them all snugged up pretty evenly. And now you can go ahead and tighten all 7 of these down in somewhat of a cross pattern to 15 to 17 foot-pounds. Now we can go ahead and get our turbo put back in here on the pedestal. And there really is no easy way to do this. It's a horrible, awkward angle no matter what way you do it. You just gotta kind of find stuff to lay on and deal with the pain. Make sure your O-rings are still on there. You'll feel it drop down on there. And you can grab your bolts and start threading those in. Now you can torque those bolts down to 18 foot-pounds according to the book, but based on some research that I did due to some concerns with leakage and stuff like that, you can, apparently Garrett actually upped the spec to up to 36 foot-pounds. And looking at the size of the bolt there, I totally believe that they can handle that. So I'm going to go for kind of a happy medium and go about 25 to... Now we're going to go back to screwing with our up pipes. If you don't care about this part and are just watching for the turbo removal and installation, you can skip ahead to whatever time I put, somewhere there on the screen. Now we can go ahead and grab our new bellowed up pipe kit. These are way better than the donut gasket style. The only ones I would recommend. Now, as far as these go, I got them off Rock Auto, but they were like 80 or 90 bucks, something like that. You can get them on Amazon for about the same price. You can also go to a lot of the bigger diesel shops, but I want to say they're like 400 bucks for pretty much the same thing. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're probably better quality, but on my other truck, I've got a set of cheap ones that I've had on there for, I don't know, probably pushing 100,000 miles and no leaks as of yet. That's your call what you want to do. But anyway, they're all going to be pretty much the same. And just get your bolts separated out here. The longer ones will go up here through your exhaust manifold. And these shorter ones here are what threads into the collector here. And don't forget to put these gaskets in, because otherwise you're doing it for nothing. Next, you're going to want to take and put your clamp on it. Make sure it's oriented like this with the bolt part of it, or the stud part, sticking towards the driver side of the truck. And then this is going to take 2 hands, but go ahead and get it put up onto your turbo up there, and then just kind of loosely thread on the clamp, just enough to hold it for now. So once you've got that clamp started, you can go ahead and just snug it on up from up here, because it doesn't need to move anymore.
Now, if you're doing this on a truck that has the transmission still in it, I can't guarantee that this is the exact procedure you're going to follow. It may be a little different. I've never actually done up pipes with the transmission in the truck. That just sounds awful. I have no intentions of ever doing it either. Once you get this torque down to your final torque, we'll go back down underneath and start putting the pipes on.
Just remember, the curvy one goes on the passenger side and the more straight one goes on the driver's side. And we'll just start loosely threading everything together up there, and don't forget about your gaskets. Then once you've got all of your bolts just loosely threaded in, which I've found that it kind of helps to thread the top ones in first. It'll kind of support it while you get the bottom started and all that. Once you've got that done, you can start snugging these down here at the bottom. I don't know what the torque spec is on it, but just make them pretty tight. You don't want them to leak. Then once you got the bottom ones tightened down, you can move on up to the top, and those are typically 10 millimeter. They are in my kit here. And if you get to this point and you see this, don't freak out. It's not made too short. They're just designed, when you tighten these bolts up, it'll actually just pull it up to it. So that is completely normal for it to be having a gap like that. Next, we can come back up top here and go ahead and get the intake spider put back on. I found it usually easiest to put the boots down on the plenums first and then put the spider down on top of them. And make sure you get your clamp on there first. And then it's also a good time before you do this to clean up your boots and clamps. That way you get a good seal. And get our intercooler pipes put back in. I was going to show you that, but the aftermarket boots that I bought way back in the day, they're Venair brand. Yeah, I'll never buy these things again. They're like stupid long, which makes working with it pretty much impossible. And next we can get our wires plugged back in, get the little hoses ran back for the wastegate actuator, and also get the line going to the map sensor hooked back up. Then next you can go ahead and get your air filter back on there, and yeah, pretty much done at this point. You'll probably notice that I didn't say anything about the downpipe yet. That's because I'm not putting it on currently, but if you can take it off, I'm sure you can get it put back on there. Oh, and I almost forgot, this is really important. This is one of the most critical steps of all. When you get done, thanks for watching.